Well, could that be 40 seconds? Yes. But is it? No. I'm Andreas Xirtus. Welcome to Wednesday Ultra. I'm glad you're all here. How you doing?
Great. Doing
Next,
fantastic.
next to
Thank
me
you
is
for asking.
Mark from My Family Thinks I'm Crazy. He's preparing to divulge some interesting disclosure. I mean, we're going to talk about some things. He was like, I don't know if we have any MK Ultra for Wednesday Ultra. I'm like, dude, I just saw some Jeffrey Dahmer stuff. It's going to be okay. Olivia's here with us, bringing a certain amount of poise and rationality, and I think a certain amount of sanity as well, but also some news from the world, which apparently is kind of messed up. Did you hear? I heard there's some stuff that's messed up in the world tonight. Yeah,
I did.
Yeah. I mean, so that'll be something that we can talk about. How you doing other than the world itself? You feeling all right?
I'm good, trying to cope with the world the best I can. I've been extremely black-pilled lately, though. I don't know if it's just me, but like the past month and a half, I've been like all doom and gloom, very pessimistic for the future.
Dude.
Yeah.
What's that stuff that we were talking about yesterday? Shikjatjit or whatever, that like black resin that absorbs. Shilajit. We're gonna be Shilajit pilling tonight. It's this weird dark black resin that just like absorbs all the negativity.
Monkeys love it.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Russians use it to fix bone fractures, apparently. Mr. Douglas is here, which you weren't feeling well last time, and I didn't feel well because of you not feeling well. So I'm glad.
I don't like to spread the bad feelings. I'm happy to spread some good feelings here. Yeah, I blew up my back. It was awful. I was doing the dishes, and I was like, "Hey, age, okay, great." So yeah, it took me
That's the worst. You weren't like lifting bodies or bags of concrete. Nothing. It was a
good kitchen helper. Just shut down. I had to lay down for 3 days. It was embarrassing. But
back's not a good design. They need to work on the back. I think.
Yeah. Who designed the back? Who put this together? After 25, it goes, good luck. Warranty out.
Only people over 30 know what we're talking about, but it's a real thing. Seth, Venice Beach Dub Club. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. My back blows out every now and then, but I always try to keep a positive attitude. I wish I was joking about that. No, I'm doing great, man. You know what I mean? I'm here to tell you, don't worry about the red pill or the blue pill. Just don't take any pills from a stranger in a trench coat.
Ooh, that is a subject.
I stole that from Owen Benjamin, but it's appropriate.
Dude, Katie with the big one saying money helps with the blues, and I think she agrees. We're going full orange tonight. Well, there's a couple things. I guess I want to start though by asking, like, what are you guys seen this week or been feeling, or did you watch any cool shows, or did you like see someone die? What's been going on in your lives?
I got to drop down a little love for the show Primal. They just finished their second season, and I want to say it is a beautiful adult animation show on HBO. It, to me, speaks to me because it represents the kind of life and world and activity that would be happening before all this crap that we are surrounded in that very well tosses black pills in our mouths. It was before all of that. And so it's a representation of what more so of what we really could be and the kind of innate capabilities that we've got within us all that are there waiting to be tapped if only we unshackled ourselves from the crap that is around us these days.
Man, this looks like really Frank Frazetta, Fire and Ice. I like the 80s style. What is this about? Like, I mean, it looks cool.
It is about an apex caveman losing his whole family to a pack of dinosaurs. He thinks about, he thinks, well, maybe I should kill myself. No, wait, I'm going to seek revenge. He tries to seek revenge, finds another pack of dinosaurs, ends up being a mama dinosaur with 2 dinosaur babies. In the moment, other dinosaurs show up. He defends the mama dinosaur and baby dinosaurs from the other dinosaurs. The other dinosaurs eat the baby dinosaurs. Mama dinosaur and caveman team up.
Whoa.
And they roam prehistory as apex beings, like forging a path unknown until this moment in time. It's beautiful.
Dude, this is nuts. Okay, I like it. So, I mean, what would you relate it to? Like, do you think it's can we get something?
And Hooch.
Sure. Don't chew on the car seat, Turner. Yeah.
Do you think what's the lesson here that we're learning from it? You're saying that we don't need civilization, or that we need to get back in touch with ourselves. What's it teaching us?
All valid points right there. Yes, basically that there is so much more to us all innately that has been suppressed, sequestered, secreted away to conform with this machine that does not serve us primarily. Where if only we were to reignite what was within us all along, we can surmount amazing obstacles. And show after show, episode after episode, they beat seemingly insurmountable odds, from like massive sea monsters to crazy ancient, like wild old school civilization wars. It's a beautiful story. I cannot recommend it enough.
Dude, Primal. I will check it out. This is also a super chat. Stefan, which we love you, Stefan, says after September 30th, 2022, Bank of England paper pound 20s and 50 pounds will no longer be legal tender. Imagine all the dealers and prostitutes whose life saving. This is kind of interesting. Actually, we could get interested in this subject. In England, your money goes bad. Like your money expires. Like if it's old money, you can't use it anymore. You have to take it to the bank, and then they might tell you you can get it exchanged. But you have to have.
We'll give you half. We'll just.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's the exchange rate?
Right. So that way they keep the money digital and in the banks as much as possible. And otherwise, you're only using money in order to exchange it, which bothers essentially the biggest businesses that aren't going to the banks. Those would be certain family mom and pop chains that sell whatever products, milk and stuff, or cigarettes, counterfeit cigarettes, I guess. I don't know. What do you think, though? I mean, like digital money coming. Do you think digital money is first?
CBDC is going to roll up in the U.S. 2023. You got Jerome Powell talking about it. He's celebrating this CBDC that the Fed now. It's going to pop in here.
I feel like this is going to mess up my whole VBDC flow.
Right?
VBDC, no CBDC.
Bad news for me.
VBDC, no CBDC. That's all right. We can do it. It'd be a good T-shirt. That's a good T-shirt.
But yeah, I mean, they're going towards a government-backed digital currency that would be paperless, and that seems like
highly monitored. Yes, very dangerous.
I hear some.
It's a little dystopian.
I hear some queasiness. Yeah. What do you think? Go in. Why?
I always felt like digital currency was one of those things that is a really good concept, is very useful to a lot of people, and that more people should be utilizing. But I think I always predicted that it was going to be bastardized by the government, and this is just the first step in doing that, basically. And I'm like super like, I feel like the new world order is coming anyways. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be an accelerationist. There's one world currency coming anyways. This is probably the beginning of that, but hey, what do I know?
Oh, I do know. Do you guys know what the penal code 187 is?
It's murder, isn't it?
That's right, Dougie. It is. That's kind of an interesting number that they would choose for this plan. I don't know, but yeah.
I feel like the instinct to tyrannize is scarier than the technology to do it with, because it's kind of like you have a big algebra test coming up in a month, so it's not scary. Then when it's like a day before, you're panicking. So that there's people who have the instinct to tyrannize us this whole time, but now as we get to the dawn of the technology to make it more feasible, we start to really feel the pressure. I think it's more about us laying our own plans and having confidence in our own ability to create the future that we want. But too late in this instance.
Bitcoin. There is a parallel system that is being set up that is unlike anything that has come before, wildly decentralized, and it's a feature, not a bug in that case. The Lightning Network itself is a beautiful spider web of decentralization. There is a chance where we can, also Cardano, but right now, well, Cardano just had its vassal upgrade. There's a lot of opportunity here. We're not in the deep darkness of digital slavery just yet, but it's going to take each and every one of us going, okay, no to this, yes to something else. And it's going to be hard in the beginning.
Right. I mean, but then the thing is, people are going crazy. Seth, I don't know if this is what you wanted to say was what you were doing this week. I mean, you'd sent me earlier some stuff about fictosexuality. I don't know. That's not exactly what you called it, but that's what some of these guys say. That's not what these guys say.
Oh, yeah.
Japanese man who married virtual character now on a mission to educate others about fictosexuals. Now, I'm not saying. Oh my God.
I was just telling my mom about this like 2 days ago, and she did not believe me this was a real thing.
Oh, it's a real thing.
I swore to her. I was like, there's these creepy Japanese guys that
they got a word
available.
No, it's not even that. They just don't even like women because fictosexuals got properties that women don't,
Yeah, that cannot physically.
Give me the pros and cons. Give me the pros and cons.
I mean, you're a woman, so imagine being in a relationship with a man, and then imagine having to put up with him all the time, right? And then imagine a machine that could just deal with that.
I mean,
right?
For a man, why would a
well, then who's the guy? Then the guy's got a girlfriend who's dealing with how insane he is all the time and stressing her out and giving her anxiety, or he's got a robot that just tolerates it. right? So I mean, for people that are fully unable to have compatible interactions with people, this is a supplement for human interaction, which instead of putting them in an empty room or giving them some sort of a, being raped in prison, or something else, or putting them in a mental institution.
It's unreal that there's people think they're really not capable of it. Because I remember, I'm old, I'm 46, and when I was in high school, there was like a group of like dorks who would sit at like the dork table, and they started having girl dorks, and then they were having parties, and we'd hear they're having swimming pool orgies and stuff. We'd be like, the dorks, And it was like, so there was no internet, there was no fictosexual girlfriend, there was no Japanese pillow girlfriend or anything like that for you to have. So people just made it happen. They found the people that were on their level or in their league or whatever it was and made it happen. So I think it's sad that there's really people out there who feel like they're incompatible with all other human beings, including ones that also feel incompatible. I mean, that's a compatibility right there.
Dude, look at these absurd Japanese dating sims that actually exist. So for one is the Hato full boyfriend. Every time you're out and about and see a bunch of pigeons eating an old piece of bread and you're like, yes, please. Well, there's a dating sim that you can work out these very specific tendencies. And this game is the only human attending a school for pigeons. And you're trying to fit as best you can in while leveling up your character in order to be able to date specific pigeons. It's not clear if it's the best pigeon to date, but you're getting a date with any one of those sky rats to see move. Okay, now there's another one.
If you remove the romantic aspect from this would be a video game. I don't play video games.
Levels are above.
This video game would appeal to me if it wasn't romantic. If you were just a guy at the park feeding pigeons and trying to ingratiate yourself with the pigeons and making pigeon friends, that's a video game for someone like me that doesn't like added unnecessary drama or stress. Like I like to play Pokemon Snap, where you're just casually taking pictures of Pokemon and there's no danger or health meter. So this would appeal to me if it wasn't romantic. I don't want to date a pigeon, but I'd love to make friends with one.
They have worse ones.
Raise a pigeon army. That's what I want to know.
Brothers fall in love. I'm not going to read it, but Jurassic Heart looks good. First of all, Jurassic, a great name. It kind of reminds me of Tammy and the T-Rex, which is an underrated movie in itself. Tammy and the T-Rex. It's a great movie. It's a guy and a girl. They fall in love, but then he dies in some horrible accident. It's that guy from Gone in 60s. No, Fast and the Furious, right? But he dies, and he almost dies, and then the scientists are able to bring his brain back in an animatronic robotic dinosaur. So Tammy and the T-Rex have to learn how to love in the 90s while everything is just up in the air. You know what I mean?
Hold my hands.
Usually I skip this part.
Just hold my hands.
I mean, it's a good movie. It's just a lot to deal with. But there's also these games, waifu and laifu. I don't know exactly what the laifu means yet.
Where's the one with the World War II tanks where you're trying to date a World War II tank that has she's coy.
Yeah, I mean, so
seductive.
Like, these are things like llama, paca.
Yeah, I know that one.
God, so this is crazy.
This
because he does research, by the way, not because he's playing these games, but.
This reminds me of your Xirtus. You're always talking about when intellectual property rights expire. Is that the right term? Like when Mickey Mouse becomes fair use, or what's the right word for that?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Public domain.
Public domain. Yeah, thank you. So it's kind of like when Ready Player One, the book came out, and they started saying they're going to make Spielberg wants to make a movie, and I said, well, no studio would ever pay for the rights to every intellectual property that ever existed just to have it in a movie. So you can do it in a book because the law is different, but no one would ever be able to make this into a movie. Then they did. They made it a movie. It had Gundams, King Kongs, everything, every property you can ever imagine. The $6 Million Man. So I was like, all right, apparently, nothing is out of reach, but that also makes nothing interesting. Like it was always fun to imagine Superman versus Batman. Then once you've seen it, you're like, I wish I hadn't seen it. Like my imagination.
There were ways that they could have done it. They just didn't. But
do you think doing this kind of stuff is like the terminus of like a fiction? Like once you've seen what happens if King Kong fights Wonder Woman, you can easily immediately. You think it's good? Okay.
So, well, here's why. Okay, so I hear your issue with it, but I think the thing is, I have less respect for the 20th century copyright media than any other media and any content in all time and space and history. Everything created in the last century was designed to be a bastardization of free information. So you've got like Snow White and all these other stories, and then they've been turned enough around and perverted into such a way that they can be copyrighted for 20 to 75 years. So they're not even based on the real things, and they're interesting enough, but they have a right to exist. But then, therefore, so do these other horrible things, like
forget
Twilight. Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey deserve to exist just as much as Mickey Mouse deserves to exist. And so what ends up happening then is you have to remember, like a long time ago, that's what everything was like. The mythology of the gods go from one town to the other. Sure. Someone tells you
it's a perfect example because they put Hercules into the DC universe. So Superman has fought Hercules and stuff like that. So forget about copyright.
And Greek mythology did a lot of gay stuff. So it's not even that weird for Disney characters to do.
Did a lot of gay stuff. It's just a group.
Yeah. What do you think about canon, though? Forget about respecting copyright. What about respecting canon? Like if you take a creative idea from my head and a creative idea from your head, then a third party can make it in canon that they interact with each other in a way that neither of us ever thought about or intended.
In the old days, we just had a simple solution of Crusades.
In my old days, we would say, what if Superman fought Batman? And then you'd get to theorize about it, but there would never be a canonic version of that.
Yeah, but the thing is, canon is that'd be even more complicated because you're saying, okay, who has to tell the story for it to become canon?
Right.
Then you're saying in Greece, like when certain philosophers repeat the story of Aristotle tells your story, all of a sudden is it canon? Because he heard some ancient African Iconian myth or something like that. Like, because that's a lot of what all these stories are there the stories that people told around campfires to their kids.
And now we see this problem manifesting in mainstream life when we don't have a canonic history of the United States. What year was it founded? Was it built by slaves? Like we can't agree on these things. So it's like a Batman versus Superman problem with history books.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that we're going to get more of our history from comic books as time goes on. Like
I think in our history books in the near future, Batman and Superman might be in them right alongside George Washington and Luke Skywalker, and it'll be like Ready Player One, but that's what they'll teach in history class. Just everything's in there. Mickey Mouse.
on the worst of segues, do you think Jeff Bezos or Lex Luthor has anything to do with the Nordstrom? Just kidding. But did you hear this? And is it, because I remember just a couple hours before the whole thing, they were saying, oh man, CIA sent some warnings to the German government.
Deep divers under there. Yeah, man.
So, what do you, Olivia, you were keen on this story. What do you know about this?
So there was multiple different, I'm sure you guys seen some floating around Twitter, but there was multiple different instances of the Biden administration threatening to quote unquote put an end to Nord Stream 2. Like literally in January, the under Secretary of State, who's under the Secretary of State, who's appointed by Biden, said that if Russia invades Ukraine, Nord Stream 2 is going to end. Like when prompted about these questions, nobody has anything specific, but they just keep giving vague answers like, oh, we have what it takes. They're going to end. We're going to put a stop to it, whatever. Then the next month in a joint press conference with the Chancellor of Germany, aka where the Nord Stream pipeline goes to from Russia, Biden is up here saying, again, if Russia invades Ukraine, Nord Stream 2, we're going to put an end to it. And then when a reporter prompted him, it was like, what does that mean? Like, how can you do that? He was like, believe me, like, we have what it takes. Wow. And so months later, now people are like, okay, well, Biden said he's going to do this if Russia invades Ukraine. Did he do this? Russia might believe that he does. The Russian like ambassador to the UN or whatever believes that he does. He tweeted that. And then the chair between the ambassador between like the EU and USA relations in the European Parliament also said like thanks Biden or thanks America or something like that on Twitter. So there's people that matter. There's people whose opinions matter that are saying that Joe Biden did it. So that actually really sucks if it did it or not, because he should never have said that shit in the first place.
Right, but it sounds like he did.
It sounds like really, really sounds like he did.
Come on,
They're
man.
denying it. So the press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, whatever the fuck, the black lesbian lady.
Kareem Abdul-Jean-Pierre, yes.
Yes, exactly. She denied the allegations today, I believe, earlier this morning, and she kind of danced around it because there was a reporter that was like, "I'm going to give you the opportunity, like, why are people speculating that Biden did this?" And then she was like, "Well, he was referring to the agreement with Germany to freeze Nord Stream 2, but we're talking about the leaks. I don't know what relevancy that has." And then, yeah, she straight up denied it, but I don't even think she would know if it was true.
Yeah, this could be, all of these international players here, because you've got Germany wants to do this, and then they're turning back on their nukes. They were saying they're setting up to, or continue their nukes, rather. They were going to just ban 2 other nuclear reactors that they built in the 60s, but they're going to continue them running now. So most of Germany, as long as you've got a Tesla, you're fine, is like the plan. But I mean, yeah, a lot of people are going to not get electricity to their houses. They've started controlling the smart meters. Europe it's going to get super hot and super cold. It's about to get super cold, and then they're going to the hot was already hard enough. A lot of old people died. Got to imagine in some of these places where it's super cold, like what's going to happen to people.
There's so many
bad.
angles to this, so I hope we spend some serious time on this.
Let's
One of the most suspect angles is the fact that Poland announced the Baltic Pipeline to Europe to supply all the natural gas and oil demands of Europe on the same day that the sabotage on the Nord 1 and 2 occurred. They're like, oh, that's funny that happened because we just opened our own pipeline that seems to solve this problem. That's like it's auspicious.
Oh, is your pipeline closed? You come over here. It's okay. We have you. It's all right. Who knew?
Yeah, we never heard of this, by the way. Did
What
they build it in a
timing?
day? How come this whole
Yeah.
time we've been worrying about the people freezing in Germany? No one ever mentioned this. It's just amazingly bad reporting.
Problem solved. Wait, so this is the Baltic Pipeline. Oh, brutal. This is bad. Baltic Pipeline is going to.
Where are the journalists that told us this was coming? The coming down the pipeline, as it were. How come we
Right?
never even heard of this.
Energy net.
Yeah.
Baltic Pipeline is going to be a key route to carry gas from Norway through Denmark to Poland and neighboring countries. It'll make it possible to import up to 10 billion cubic meters of gas annually from Norway to Poland and to transport 3 billion cubic meters, I think, of gas from Poland to Denmark. This is interesting because, of course, that's good news for Norway. They're going to be making even more money than ever before because everyone in the country gets a little stipend, but only a little stipend, and then the rest of the money get the state.
Here's the question: is Saudi Arabia going to go to war with Poland now? Because this is the whole problem that's been happening in Syria and Yemen and everything is trying to prevent oil trade from the other direction. So, I mean, is Norway just allowed to do this, or do we get mad at them? Does Saudi Arabia get mad at them? I mean, I kind of wonder how this plays in. It's such a disaster that we don't have any real journalists anymore. All we have is people who share stories and all share the same stories. And then when there's something like this that nobody has any original reporting on it, nobody copies it and shares it. Then we're blindsided by information like this, that there's a competing pipeline.
Dude, and that they painted them to look like bananas is just like too. I mean, that's audacious, man. It's the
Well,
banana
what do you guys think? If there's three options for the Nord Stream, which is either Biden, there's U.S. Navy operations in the area, so it looks very possible that this is U.S. sabotage. A lot of people are accusing Python of doing like a Reichstag fire and doing this to himself, like a false flag. And then, of course, there's any third party with the capacity to do it could do it in order to spark international tensions in World War III, like a James Bond movie. You could have a Soros or someone like that go and blow it up themselves and just watch everyone fight. I mean, what do you guys think is more likely?
I
don't think Putin would do this to himself.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's a little far-fetched, and I think that a lot of Americans are saying that because they don't want to look inward. I'm not saying that Biden 100% did it, but he said he was going to do it, and now that he's denying it in a really roundabout way, I don't know. I don't really buy it. So I think there's like a 50-50 chance that our administration, our country did it, but I think there's only like probably 1-2% chance that Putin would do something like that.
Mm. I kind of agree with you because usually when you do a false flag, it's to start a war. He's in the middle or the end of a war, so it's a weird timing to do a false flag.
Exactly,
Usually you do that to have an excuse to go to war. Also, I think the thing with Biden basically announcing in advance he's going to do it is, as they say, too on the nose. Like if you're watching a murder mystery movie and you can identify who the murderer is in the beginning, you're like, this is bad writing. This is for like people who aren't even paying attention, who can't figure this out, So to me, it seems like an opportunist thing. Like, wow, we're in favor of shaking the box, the international order. And here's Biden kind of set himself up as like the perpetrator of this. So if we execute it, everyone's going to accuse him of doing it.
That's interesting.
James Bond style.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. But go ahead, Doug.
Well, I don't know if I would give the president himself that much points in his corner.
You're right.
Perhaps the apparatus around him is pushing that agenda. That makes a lot of sense because there is a real struggle here right now for the direction of where the Western world is going to go. And this would be a massive move to keep those who have been in power a little longer, for sure.
Yeah. Kamala Harris has a weird background, right? Like she was in Canada, Jamaica. She's been around the world. She's involved with some British agencies and some intelligence agencies before all of this. But even just in terms of the executive branch, there's a number of people that once you get to the military side of things, just allowing something to happen, like they might have said, okay, well, we've already agreed for this to happen, and it was turned off. So it's only like billions and billions. It's supposed to be 2 million cars worth for the next 2 years, equivalency of emissions, but it's emissions of like methane gas and certain kinds of gases and things like that. So it's pretty terrible in every respect. But it seems like they made sure to isolate how bad it was. Like, oh, it's only this bad. We could make sure that it was turned off already. There's already stuff in the tube, but if it was a full-on crisis, we've seen full-on crises where these oil drills just don't stop for like weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and then there's fire.
That's interesting. I didn't even realize. Yeah, you're right. It had already, the Nord Stream 2 wasn't operational yet, and the Nord Stream 1 they were already basically sanctioning Europe by turning it off. You're right.
So,
but I'm sure whoever did this and dumped however many, you just read the figure, however many billions of cubic tons of oil are into the ocean. I guarantee you, whoever orchestrated this is also a climate activist.
Right. There was a thing I just saw a while ago on Kamala Harris in Japan amid the protester over state funeral for slain ex-prime minister Shinzo Abe. And so she's been maneuvering around the world in a lot of ways. And, we keep looking at pictures of Joe Biden falling and not these pictures with these smirks. I think that's something that we could consider. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be the James Bond villain right there. I mean, talk about not being on the nose. No one suspects Kamala Harris of coordinating anything.
Very true.
Yeah,
that's right.
I do.
Got a track record that doesn't look like that. Yep.
Right. It's just so on the nose with Biden. I mean, he already had the faux pas about, the Ukrainian prosecutor and son of a bitch. What do you know? And it's like, who's writing this stuff, And if these are actual off the script faux pas that he's doing that cause so much trouble for his side, like they should put a shock collar on him. And as soon as he starts to say something that's not on the teleprompter, they should just be delivering shocks to make him stop talking or something.
They had a picture recently where a blind man's being led by Joe Biden.
I saw that.
And I think it's like, you can't not have set that. It had to have been set up. Like, and it's funny. It's amazing. The guy's dumb. We get it. But they did that with George Bush. And that's when they pulled a lot of the worst stuff. And, I think it's just something we got to be careful about with Biden is he's constantly the empty hand, while the left hand is doing the magic trick almost all the time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We have to, there's an expression in the pro wrestling community called there's marks, who are the people who are like the target audience. Then there's smart marks, who are the people who are so involved that they understand all the backstage politics, and they understand the long-term storytelling and know everything that's going on. We're like the smart marks because we're paying attention to this stuff every day. But for the average normie viewer who watches 5 minutes of news and then 3 hours of football, no offense or anything, but for that person, they have to be able to.
Good job, Vikings, by the way. No,
they have to be able to understand the thrust of the storyline too. So when we see stuff so on the nose like that, like Biden said he would do it, then someone did it. It was Biden. Like, I don't think this is for us. I think this is so the average person can talk about at the water cooler what happened, and it's exactly what we're supposed to believe happened.
Right. What do you guys think about Giorgia, the Meloni? She's an Italian based.
Rousing speech.
Wikipedia calls her based. That's always concerning.
They stole our word.
But the thing is, she was part of a lot of like the social youth movement, some very right wing organizations.
She went to Lord of the Rings camp, man. She
pretty sweet.
Yeah,
but she's interesting. I like her so far. I just don't know a lot about her, except that her family, and this is the thing, because she always talks about the family and how important the family is, right? And in Italy, the family is it's more than the Olive Garden; it's the mafia. And her father and mother's family come from Sardinia and Sicily and are associated with tax collecting, which mafit is the Arabic word for the tax collector, essentially the protector that would keep you safe in exchange for taxes. So, I mean, it's interesting because you have this big money in Europe, the conservatives and the Democrats, et cetera, they kind of flipped, right? The Democrats are neoliberal conservatives that are trying to hold on to the Democrats are considered conservatives. And then there you've got this oligarchical, big money that's being kind of connected to this European economic conservative group, right? What's it called again? European Conservative and Reformist Party, right? Is the thing. Yes. Have you seen much about this group? They're an alliance across the European Union soft Eurosceptics. A lot of people associate them with populism, Eurorealism. I mean, so, and I'm saying this kind of critically because I know everyone is like, hey, they're not right wing, they're not alt-right, they're not all these other things. I agree with that. But what do you think it really is? Like, what is this push in Europe? Because this is what they did in Greece. And Greece had a populist right-wing movement, and now Greece is under the wing of the banks, completely controlled, have to do everything the bank said. Do you think that Italy is going through the same thing, or what is? Okay, go ahead. You explain.
100%. First of all, she's a product of the Aspen Group, which is a globalist think tank. We have no history of this lady. We're just shown this one base speech and supposed to fall in love with her, disregard her whole history. So she's a product of the Aspen Group. She's pro traceable digital currency. She's pro jabby juice. She got publicly jabby juice. So this is not my person. And she comes out there and literally, by the way, I'm supposed to get this speech. Okay, it's based, but the first time I saw the speech, I saw it on mute, and all I noticed was like she looks like she had like Hitler eyes. She's like she's a boogeyman for the left, just like they make boogeymen for us, like the teacher with the bazungas and all that. This is a boogeyman for the left. I don't believe she's organic whatsoever. And I'm like medium smart, so I fall for every new trick, but I don't fall for any trick twice. So I fell for this with Trump, and she's already publicly jabbed. So there's no way I'm falling for this again with her. And you made a great correlation to Greece. That's a brilliant correlation. That's exactly what happened. And I think that's probably the same path for Italy. I'm not buying it.
Any thoughts?
I did not know about that pro central bank digital currency move. That's a big, like, sorry, checking out. I can't be a part of that. That is ultimate control coming down the line. I don't want any part of that.
I have to research that, but I feel like I was automatically skeptic of anyone that I'm told to either extremely love or extremely hate someone. There's one side being like, she's a fascist, she's going to take over Italy, she's a white nationalist, da 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 da, and the other side is calling her a hero. I'm automatically very skeptic. So I have to look into what was that think tank you said she came from?
The Aspen Group.
Okay, yeah, I have to look into that because that's interesting.
We should look into her family and all that stuff as well, because we're so desperate for a hero. But Tina Turner was right. We don't need another hero. Beyond Thunderdome and Mad Max, that song's crucial, and it's totally true. We don't need a hero. We are the hero we're waiting for. I'm so skeptical of any of these people that just pop up and start giving these based speeches, and of course they're going to steal our word. We have to start using a new word now.
Dude,
defenses up, shields up.
Shields up.
I mean, the thing with all these
characters, I'm wrong, I'll feel horrible though, but
the thing with all these characters that they're putting in front of us, though, it's like they're still, trying to get us through, like, if they're from the left or the right, which I think is kind of interesting, and then every time the critical move is to say, how associated are they with the bank system? Oh, they're trying to do this. Okay, wait a second, because it's always the elite versus it's the tax collector versus the tax citizen every time. But they're trying to point it to which side of the, we're going to spend your money on this, we're going to spend your money on that. It's to the point now where it's just too brutal. The amount of taxes are too high. I mean, I don't know if that's just too basic, but.
Yeah. Also, I mean, it's not cheap to run for prime minister or, for the premier position of any country. So who funded it? Like, I'm not a journalist, but I hope someone, does this research, but I'm disappointed just to see everyone jump on it and like Italian Trump. And it's just like, dude, American Trump was a disaster. Like, that's not even a good comparison for her.
Dude, I wish I could remember earlier, Doug, we were talking a bit about how we need to fix the world, or how the world could be fixed. Or do you have suggestions on how the world could be saved or changed? Do you recall?
If it isn't, when it concerns decentralized currency, it is taking ownership to the nth degree of your economic value. And that's difficult to do. Giant, who I wish was here, I wish him the best. He makes that point often, where you got to take control, grow your own food, have your own space. For those of us that are locked into the system a little bit more, investing a little bit into a decentralized currency that cannot be controlled by a centralized authority, unless they turn off all the electricity, which, hey, yeah, sure, that could still happen, is an opportunity, but it will be difficult in the beginning. I did see that the company that does run, not Slack, I can't remember what it's called, but the company that's running the Lightning Network, or at least facilitating the Lightning Network, just received a whole bunch of Series B funding to have major businesses integrate the Lightning Network into their payment systems. The Lightning Network never touches the SWIFT network. It does not go through whatsoever any centralized system. It would be a parallel decentralized system. There is an opportunity here for us to say, you know what? I'm not going to use whatever coin or token you're passing to me from the banks. I'm going to use this. And if enough people just check out, they're either going to have to blow us all up or acquiesce a little bit of it, and we'll have a parallel system.
Speaking of blowing us all up, this is when you guys were pointing out, which is kind of funny. There's like, everyone's like, oh, Mars. We could always go to Mars. It'd be great there. There's a lot of water, right? There's always pictures scientists tell you, hey, there's tons of water. But now they're like, hey, actually, maybe this isn't water. It's reflections of
rocks. Maybe it's just rocks.
And
that was an awful article. I read that this morning. Thank you for bringing it up. Yeah. Everyone's talking about how initially they saw what could have been reflections of water ice on the South Pole now just look like maybe they're rocks. But they don't know. We don't know. Stop sending us the bad news. Don't rain on my Mars parade.
Every flat earther is like, I told you so, but
Shell Beach. For anyone who's seen Dark City, Shell Beach. Mars is Shell Beach. We're always trying to get there. You never get there.
Oh, good movie, good reference, good reference. No, I honestly, I maybe it was you, Seth, last time that it mentioned, hey, look, we're spending all this money looking at trying to get off this planet. Why don't we spend it on making this planet the best it can possibly be?
We're in the Garden of Eden now. We've got everything. They're like, they might have a little water on Mars. I'm like, bro, we have like waterfalls and oceans. It's amazing.
Because we have crazy people.
Think of anything better.
The idea is to get away from humans.
Before you make this elegant segue, let's stay on the topic of space. Have you seen that they're looking at Venus as the next possible planet to travel to? What's up with that? I mean, as far
it always was. That was the first choice.
Like this sort of inhospitable, gassy sort of. There's a solid surface, but the atmosphere doesn't seem very friendly. Yeah.
Well, if you get into that sort of thing, like Russia was trying to go to Venus first. The Venusian missions were the most important. The first lander melted, and then they're like, whoa, it's hot. And then they realized also the density of pressure because the gases felt like you're 900 miles deep or something like that on the surface. So they made this crazy thing. I don't know if I can find the picture of the actual. There we go. It looks kind of like this. It's this giant solid titanium and all this crazy metal. Designed to absorb heat, and eventually I think it was like the 17th mission, they say. And I remember this from third grade because I had to do this science project for Venus, and I was like, no one's ever been to Venus, it's too hot. And she's just like, actually the Soviets. And I had to go, she's right. Yeah,
round one to you, teach.
Yeah, she was cool. But then they had the microwave or the what do you call it, the microphone recording, and they actually have recordings. They have a photo they took with this sound for like 30 seconds that they broadcast back and sent from Venus. And they're like, okay, so Venus is obviously the place to go. All we got to do is drop a bunch of nukes on Venus, and then this storm atmosphere will transform. We'll have a nuclear winter. The winter will cause the gases to separate like oils in your glass. They'll drop to the base. We can then eject that into space or use it for something else, because once it warms up, it'll just go back into the atmosphere unless we get rid of it. And so the first plans were always about conditioning the atmosphere of Venus.
Terraforming.
So you don't want to send anyone there unless there's water, right? So let's leave this planet with an abundant amount of water. Let's not figure out how to make the salt water fresh. Let's figure out how to get to other planets with very small amounts of water.
Yeah, but I still think it comes down to the fact that people eat people, and they're just like freaked out. I know it's a Jeffrey Dahmer segue because I've been thinking about it, but on a broader level, I think humans just terrify other humans, and they're thinking, if I can get away from humans, I can go to this other planet where there aren't as many of them. Maybe I'll be happier. Like that's what a lot of people used to think about leaving the big cities, but it's so much weirder when you live in suburbia, because it's just like no matter how far you go, there'll be another suburbia. And there was a bunch of MK Ultra here. So that was the other thing I wanted to bring up about it, was that it's not just that Jeffrey Dahmer was this crazy gay guy who ate people. I mean, I know Netflix wants to tell you that story, but really what it is that he was a, Wisconsinite, like military brat sent to West Berlin for a year. He was above average soldier with the highest marks he got in shooting because he was an alcoholic. And he was on this weird drug that they gave him called Halcyon, which is halcyon.
You're leaving something out. So
do it.
last month we had Rob Dew here on the podcast, and he actually told me this. His father worked with Jeffrey Dahmer's father. Okay.
Oh, really?
What he
Should have
told
asked
me,
Rob.
right? What he told me is that Jeffrey Dahmer's family was a pretty traumatic, divorce kind of situation in his early childhood, and his father was a very kind of cold dude, right? So, can't leave that out.
Right. Yeah.
Clearly,
Well,
I had a shitty
on
childhood.
on the level of Joyce Dahmer. So Joyce Dahmer used to take him in car trips for 13 hours looking for UFOs, and she was obsessed with flying saucers, and eventually left the family, taking the younger brother with her, and then they went off searching for UFOs. She became obsessed with UFOs and aliens and alien abductions, and he'd even talked about times with her that he'd seen lights in the sky, and the idea of losing hours and things like that. Also, though, at this point, his father was putting him on halcyon, so he was on anti-schizophrenic drugs, which were, whenever you see Jeffrey Dahmer, it's always like, like, I'm one of the school shooters you've seen all the movies about every time they're, until eventually, and then now he's dead. But you could see the differences when they changed his medication, which is a huge thing there, I think. But it could be, maybe part of it is the deal is that he was just, messed up from his mom being, a drug addict and everything else. But
It's interesting how they try to fit this into the social engineering narrative of like, well, he was, a gay guy who couldn't express himself in this macho, suppressive world where, that kind of thing was, hated, which in most cases wasn't true, but I'm sure there were extreme cases where certain towns, if you were that way, you wouldn't want people knowing about it. But, it feels like they're trying to exploit this really sick story into the social engineering narrative
I
because
think
that's what sells. That's what
Yes.
these companies are looking for.
I'm glad they did it though, and here's why. So here's the thing with the show. So obviously, I think they should put the LGBTQ label back on the movie, because not LGBTQ people don't eat people. Like that would be a weird prejudicial stereotype to say. But also beyond that, like, he's going to all these gay clubs and he's picking up all these gay kids on purpose at gay clubs. And whenever the cops talk to him, he's like, "Oh, I'm gay. Like, I'm gay. So it's my boyfriend that I drilled a hole in, and he's 14. He's in the middle of the street, whatever. Like, that's my boyfriend." The cops let it go because he's gay. And like, I don't want to get involved with that. Don't want to go into his apartment because he's gay. And so he was using gay as his weapon. He's using social tolerance and also the fear of AIDS and everything else like that as a way of getting away with this for years, even to the point where he was arrested, got Epsteined out, where they let him work while he was in jail. Like, he'd go to jail, then he'd go back to work for all day, then sleep at jail for a year. So there's all these judges along the way and cops along the way that let him get away with this. And if it is an MK Ultra, then it is social progress and tolerance that let that happen.
The question is social progress and tolerance MK Ultra?
But yeah, I mean, what do you guys think about this idea? Like, I mean, am I trying to find an excuse for insane people? I'm like, oh, you know what? People did this to him, engineered him into this, or
I think people that have the instinct to hyper differentiate from other people, if there's no path to do that in a
Productive, constructive
a productive way in society. Yeah, I think it kind of these could be the best and brightest people, like serial killers, self-starters. They find their own methods. There is no prescribed path. You can't take a book out from the library on how to get started. They do things that they've never even heard of other people doing, and they're highly successful at it. So we're talking about, very
meticulous planners. That's right.
meticulous planners. Yes, so it's like these are people.
Sorry, I didn't.
No,
mean
good.
The think about the context in which we're, thinking about this, right? We're talking about a Netflix or whoever series, and this is what's exploited in our culture: violence, hypersexuality, all these other themes that we could maybe say are anti-human.
Yeah, the military stuff and the MK Ultra is all left out of the show, by the way.
Well, because of that sort of societal sickness, we have people like this who are manifesting the more extreme symptoms of the overall sickness that is infecting our society at whole. It's not in on these, people in particular, to your point, Seth, like, yeah, these people, if they're in the right circumstances, they could do, equally profound good things, just like they've, gone the opposite direction and done profoundly dark things.
Right. Like there's a filter on acceptable character types, you know what I mean? So if this guy could have been something like an Elon Musk, but if you're not born into like a Nazi family with billions of dollars of stolen gold or something, you can't just become an Elon Musk. So I mean, what are these people supposed to do? I mean, I never wanted to be a serial killer, but I never wanted to do any of the things that are prescribed things that I'm allowed to do. So I'm like a medium interesting person who I make reggae music and do podcasts and stuff like that. But I was capable of, I mean, I still am, I'm not dead. I'm capable of doing a lot more, but there is nobody's interesting in tapping the potential of people, of any human potential, really, unfortunately.
It's very interesting. I'm actually in the midst of going through Ingo Swann's 2-volume series about power within the human species. And what do you guys think? He posits this at the end of his 3rd chapter. Does the human race naturally produce powerless people?
I mean, babies are pretty powerless, and then
I'd say the
people just
opposite. I mean, compared to what? Compared to like monkeys or other I mean, compared to anything. I mean, nothing else has
Do
like
we naturally
creativity.
produce it, or is this powerlessness that so many of us experience on so many different levels, is it more or less artificially induced and engendered within the society?
I don't think it's artificial because I think there's like a lot of constraints inherent in the physical form and mortality. I think that the human intellect is sheer power. There's nothing more powerful except for the creative force of God or whatever, but there's nothing more limiting than mortality, and also the unawareness of what death is, and that just forces you to try to avoid it at all costs. And in order to avoid death, you need to have cohesive societies, because humans are social animals. It's the only way we can survive en masse. So it's like when you do have outsiders, you kind of have to excommunicate them just to survive the winter. You know what I mean? Just to get through the next thing to the next thing, so we don't all die. So that's like, unfortunately, like a filter that kind of filters out the most interesting people. And then you get some edge cases like a Jeff Bezos or like Elon Musk who aren't filtered out. But no, I think the human intellect is the most powerful thing that can be conceived of, at least by the human intellect, obviously, but that there's constraining forces of trying to not die and trying to worrying about the whole species dying and stuff like that, forces us to limit creativity.
There's like a certain amount of like powerlessness, I would think. I mean, so with the show, and granted, it is, that's like that's the point of the show will be about sex, drugs, and racism, I think. And it's interesting. I think that's the other thing. Sex sells, racism sells, drugs sell, violence, sex and violence. That's like the thing. So sex and violence at the same time. Of course, Netflix is going to make a show about that. That was what Jim Henson wanted to call the Muppets originally, sex and violence,
Wow.
just because it was going to be a title and people would read it and they're like, oh, I got to see that, But with Jeffrey Dahmer, he loved black dudes. He was all about, his interracial relationships. And then people, so that's another side of his whole fantasies. But then society would, the cops let this happen, the small neighborhoods for years. People are calling, there's a kid who gets raped and they let it basically go under because they don't want to deal with this white guy. I mean, because it's Wisconsin in the 80s, who knows? That's what the story was. Reverend Jesse Jackson came and said, hey, they're preying on our weakest. He's like gay. It was a gay deaf dude was one of them, like these black kids who don't have a lot that are in this gay bar. He's picking them off for $50. And no one's going to defend them because they're gay, but at the same time, no one's going to defend them if they're black. Alliance with the gays over this issue in order to get some publicity about it, because otherwise it's just going to keep happening. It's not the first or the last time. I mean, now we get more and more videos about like serial killing cannibals, you know what I mean? Like, but it's not stopping. You still keep, this is not the last Jeffrey Dahmer, right? So I don't know. It seems like America's perpetuating it.
Yeah, but it's not. That's the thing, though. Like, you're looking, not you in particular, but when you look for the officers or the judge or whoever, sheriff, to settle these issues, that's not what their job is designed to do. That's not the system that they're a part of.
Right.
It's not what it's designed to do. The problem is the breakdown of the family unit. It's as simple as that. These situations only happen in extreme cases or when people have a breakdown of family values and the support that you need from your community. you know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
the police
Yeah.
officers maybe could be victim to that too. But I would say that, you know, if we're going to talk about America having a problem, it's like, well, why is that happening in the first place? It's the breakdown of our culture that started before the drug war, you know, way before World War One.
Yeah,
It
and we see like it becomes widespread now. We have things like during the Summer of Love, we had people like twerking on burning cop cars. And like I don't want to make light of it because like people, I was like, that's the army. If you want an army that can do a revolution and conquer the United States of America, there's no army on earth that's going to fight people that twerk on burning cop cars, except for like a zombie army or robots or something. I'm not even joking. That's the most, when you have a heterodox attitude about death, when you like go towards death and you go dancing towards the fire and stuff like that, there you can't train soldiers to fight that unless you have like an AI or so. As we see, like you were saying, the family unit collapse and stuff like that, we kind of see this becoming more mainstream. These like bizarre attitudes about danger and death. So the people who still have the instinct to be towards heterodoxy have to go even outside of that. You know what I mean? So I think that the more bizarre our culture gets, the more bizarre our serial killers and like our outsiders will get as well. But there's tremendous power in going towards danger and towards death. Like most people, you know, you could be a bum. You can be a bum and you can go into a bank acting crazy and all the guards are going to run out. Everyone's going to run out. They're going to call in like a 50-person SWAT team and you're just some unarmed bum. So like there's so much power in just odd behavior. You know what I mean? That's why people try to constrain that.
But I mean, so we got these guys that are killing people. It's still happening. There's GPS on phones. There's cameras everywhere. People are getting recorded doing this. And, you know, we got more and more crazy people. What are we going to do? Are we treating psychopathy? Is there like a plan? Are we going to like, are we giving them more drugs? Or how are we are we going to just put them in a box where there's, do we put them in an asylum or do we put them in a prison where they just sit there? Like, what do we...
All of that stops when we go back to a system that fits in symbiotically with what it means to be a human being. And that's different for different cultures, different for different parts of the world. But we've lost touch with what it means to be a human being in the places where drugs and violence are proliferating. And that's where these types of folks are born and raised, in situations like Kensington near Philadelphia, right? Or, you know, Vancouver, you know, Southern California in a lot of places, you
That's
know?
right.
So, and you have these people that are on the fringe because they're not particularly pathic in any way, but they're oppressed. So they are victimized because they're on the fringes themselves and they're easy prey for the people who are victimized. But instead of expressing their humanity, they're expressing this sort of predatory instinct that really we can, I would say, trace back to the system itself, which is put in place by, you know, this alpha apex predator monarchical structure, which shifts and changes depending on which country we're looking at. But yeah, it's definitely something that we can change really easily on a local level. You know, it's all about people valuing their community. You know, this type of thing doesn't happen in a place like, you know, what's the blue zone in Japan, Osaka, Japan, right? Like, I don't think they have any of those fictosexuals there because they're living a healthy lifestyle, you know, and that's a bad example. But there are other better examples of places where humanity still has, you know, value in culture and vice versa, you know.
It seems like we're getting to like a... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, it's just Paul Levy Watiko, Mark. Have you ever heard?
Let's go to what... That's a good one.
That is the apex predator. It's or at least that is how he describes this apex predator that has infected all of us to one degree or another.
Yeah, talk about what is Watiko, the virus of selfishness.
It's this predator. It's this anti-human impetus. Go ahead.
Evil spirit that invades human minds. A virus of selfishness.
Watiko can be different depending on what part of the world we're looking at. But think about it in this context. So the peyote, and I'm going to take a left turn, but I promise I'll get back to the hook here. The peyote rituals, right? The ghost dance, the Lakota. they've only been using that for the past how many hundred years? Only 200 years. That was a response energetically to the massacres and the replacements and all the tragedies that happened to the American Indians here in the United States. That seeped into the earth. Their blood seeped into the earth, and the peyote cactus blossomed and created this experience, this ghost dance for them to essentially deal with that tremendous grief of their whole nation being massacred. Now, in that same breath, you have uh, this sort of tutelary energy of the landscape that is no longer being honored, that has a consciousness itself, that is strong, that is powerful, that hasn't been hampered down by culture for thousands of years. And that is what the Wetiko is. It's the landscape energy that's been ripped apart through coal mines. It's been pulled up and paved over. It's been spit on with plastic and refuse and trash. That's the earth energy coming back up, karmically, the reflection, the inverse reflection. And it's going to affect people in this psychological way where they're manifesting karmically sort of what has happened over the course of only a few generations. It's like a self-correcting response, because if this proliferates, it could lead to, the destruction of the entire earth. So instead of letting that happen, the earth self-corrects, creates this Wetiko energy that, it's like the teacher with the big tits that we were talking about last week. It gets so absurd that everybody stops the problem, right? People don't let it go on anymore because it
it's still going on. I'm looking forward to finding the resolution to that. I lurk 4chan a bit, and the teacher with the big tits.
That teacher actually was apparently a more right-leaning individual, and was
troll.
Called it troll. It's a massive troll. Yeah. He's like, fine, whatever. I'm putting
so
on
funny.
tits.
Well, but I don't mean to change the subject with that analogy, but my point is like this response to control nature is leading to people losing control of their nature, right? That's very simply put.
That's very nice, very well put.
Have you guys seen Wild in the Streets, 1968? Oldie but a goodie. This is probably the wildest MK Ultra movie. There's a bunch of good ones, but I got the vinyl, the cassette, the DVD, the digital. You got to get yourself a copy of Wild in the Streets. Basically, the story it's made by a documentarian filmmaker named James Nicholson, and he made it to look like it was really happening for the most part, with a bit of like TV style filming. And Shelley Winters is in it, and Richard Pryor is in it as well. It's his first like big movie before he peed in Shelley Winters' hair off set, and so he couldn't make movies again for like 10 years or something like that. But I think they were into it. It was the other thing with that. But the movie's about how in 1964 to 68, the voting age and it's 21, and the youth hit a peak of 51%. And so they have the majority. About 51% of the world is under 14, not just in the world, but in the United States specifically, they have even more. So they think, hey, we should lower the voting age to 14, because all these old dudes who've grown up in war, even our dads who we love and all, they drink and smoke because they've seen men die and they're over 30. So like the only thing that excites them is watching dudes die in Vietnam, like where you don't even have to see it, And so they're like, we're gonna fix it. We'll get all the kids, we'll revolutionize them, we'll give them LSD. We'll take all the dudes over 30, all the adults over 30, and we'll retire them mandatorily at 35. We'll put them into camps where they have to take LSD every day, and then we'll just fix all the old people. And then eventually we'll end up in this perfect society that's just 14-year-olds run everything, the lowest age for president and everything. And so even being 25 is looked at as being too old. But it's like deeper than that. It's not just about age. It's not just about it's populism or politics. It's maybe more about what we think of as nature, because their nature is transient because they're youth, and they're talking so much about changing the world to stop turning into the evil thing that they see as their parents' generation that are causing wars everywhere around the world.
Right. You know, what's really interesting is in Iran right now, where they're having something like a people's revolution. I think it's somebody can get the right number of this, can Google it, but I think it's something like 60 or 65% of the nation is under 30 or under 35 or something like that. And it is like a wild in the streets scenario. Yeah. So that's interesting.
That's pretty
But
sweet.
also, I just wanted to mention as an aside and then come back to it that Bon Jovi's breakthrough album Slippery When Wet, when they released it in Japan, they didn't have a word in Japanese for slippery. So they changed the title to Wild in the Streets.
Huh. Interesting. Wild.
Cool.
Dude,
What does it mean? What does it all mean, man? Is that like Logan's Run with Ascension Day? Like, is it just an immaturity to reject your parents' music and culture and stuff like that? Or what do you guys think about so I don't mean to hijack, you can go on to the next
please.
thing, but what do you think about the women's liberation movement of Iran? Like, now it's so hard to tell if I should be with it or against it or just a casual watcher, because it didn't turn out well in America, the women's liberation movement. And I don't want anyone to feel oppressed just by the nature of their genes or anything like that either. But I don't know what the answer is. What do you guys think about the free from the hijab?
Well, first.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I'm if the women want to free themselves from
Olivia, how do you feel about hijabs?
Yeah,
yeah, good point. That's right. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought, sorry.
No, I mean, it's fine. I was curious myself.
I mean, I'm for religious freedom, not for a theocracy. And, you know, I've seen the videos that have come out. I can't verify all of it because, you know, like we all know, there's crazy stuff out there, crazy deep fakes and whatnot. But from what I've seen, I've just seen a lot of women getting beaten for like ripping off their hijab and they're burning it and stuff. I did find it kind of ironic that they're ripping off their hijabs but still wearing the face mask. Maybe that was to like not get identified on the video. So if that's the case, then that makes sense. But if it's for COVID, then I'm just gonna laugh. But overall, I'm for it.
See, that's what I think is funny. I feel like
it seems like a noble cause.
In France, when I was there, like they were freaking out about hijabs on the beach. Everyone was freaking out about hijabs on the beach. There's like then 2020 comes around and they're just freaking out about people not wearing hijabs on the beach. Just freaking out, right? Because if you're not wearing a mask, you don't love France. But just earlier, you were telling me that if you did, you hated it. It was really confusing. And then, of course, Catholicism in France, because they have women wearing the hijab of the Catholic nunnery, which is its own kind of a thing. It doesn't have the face mask, but it did in 2020, and that was ironic. I thought like we couldn't.
That's why I tried to tie that into the wild in the streets topic you brought up, because I didn't really know how to talk about that, except that I kind of see a parallel. That it's interesting that if you look at the modern day feminist movement in America, they're the ones that were burning their bras, and now they would absolutely be the last ones to take their masks off. So there is actually a kind of trying to liberate yourself from societal constraints is a kind of conformity, because we have cases where we can see how this plays out over 50 years, and it's like liberation from one thing can blend into another type of conformity where you see, like, just like you said, like we got to burn our jobs, but make sure you wear a mask. So it's like it's almost like trading one conformity for another. I don't know what it means.
Have you guys watched that movie with Tom Cruise about the aliens? What is it? War of the Worlds. You know what I'm talking about? War of the Worlds, all the aliens get sick. So when COVID first hit, I was thinking, like, what if it is really just, aliens are visiting and we got to just give them some space because, like, they could get sick from us or something like that. Or B, aliens are visiting and we smell, because, like, the other thing is you just cover up a bit and then we just we're not bothering them while they're on this like vacation that's going on for a little bit on Earth or something. I don't know. Maybe that's
we're the aliens and the viruses. That's why the virus is killing us.
My home this is, right? Well, okay. Tesla comes up. I think we could do Tesla. There's some interesting stuff. Eric Dollard, my main man, Eric P. Dollard, one of the most genius engineers in the world, who does get attacked with radio wave guns, by the way. So we should all support the poor bastard. But Tesla resonant transformer crystal radio, the idea of how to build not just a crystal radio but one that can send and receive energy. He did a bunch of this. Tesla was talking a bunch about how you could use quartz crystal as batteries and also as transceivers for radio. Born in Croatia, shout out. But yeah, what do you think about the resonant transformer? I know, Doug, you were researching this. You saw the Higher Side chat recently.
Yeah, most recent Higher Side chats was talking about using the Tesla turbine, which would transform heat, any kind of heat, into electrical energy. And really what all I got out of it was that there is far more technology readily available that has been purposefully sequestered and secreted away to have us live in this structure that and back to the ladies of Iran, this structure that they are rebelling against. My hope is that the structure that is overarching us all here is also finding itself cracking, so that when these kind of rebellious maneuvers, because it is a liberating thing to take off. I mean, I saw a dude run up to a lady in Iran, punch her in the face, and a whole bunch of other dudes came up to this guy and started beating the shit out of him. Women came over, started beating the crap out of him. Hey, there is a shift happening in society. My hope is that it's going to be a true shift and not a shift that will be guided right back into the machine that we are existing in. And to your point, Mark, it's about community. It is about that support network. As long as we've got that, we can weather whatever the hell else they're going to try and throw at us.
Well, and with the hijab in particular, I agree with you, but I also think that, it's kind of an example of how the modern world, the internet, has really, touched every corner of the globe now, because clearly, their traditional values are not as important as, what their modern ideal is, right? So, and we have communities like that here in the United States. I was talking about this in July. I went to the Amish territory in Pennsylvania, and they don't have internet, and they don't, they're not changing the way they dress anytime soon. So I don't know. It's interesting. Like,
Right.
What are they
Yeah,
changing to dress like? That's the thing. So, like, I think if you're gonna start dressing up like a basketball player or a prostitute, like, or whatever the Tinder, Instagram, OnlyFans projection of the internet tells you to be, you're not better off than you were wearing your hijab. And so that's I think the big irony of this idea of, oh, you're free now. The West does this a lot. It's like, oh, you're free now. You can drink Pepsi. Here's this. Like I have critically analyzed hundreds of Pepsi commercials. I've never gone away wanting to drink a Pepsi from it. But the same thing.
What about you're
Jeffrey
free
Dahmer.
now? You can use the crystal technology and stuff like that. It's good. I think it's foolhardy to believe that there's any level of technology that frees you from the dangers of technology. Like, it's always going to be like the parable of Icarus flying to, or the Atlantean moment. Like, the Atlanteans probably had these crystals. Superman has these crystals. That's what they do on planet Krypton. Their computers are crystals. And then Superman has the Cave of Solitude. He pulls out the crystal and puts it in a thing, and it's his message from his father, Jor-El, and all that stuff. So it's like, just because that technology exists, why is it being repressed from us? Maybe it's for our own good.
Is it being suppressed in the last 6 days or so? We've been getting more and more of these papers. China discovers a new type of moon crystal that might lead to limitless energy, right? So this is the newest one. The Rabbit 5 found itself, this new crystal. There's a couple others I was looking at. The Blue Letty's new solar array using supercapacitors, beta voltaic cells, lithium sulfur batteries are leading to a turning point. All of it is happening right now as you have no money to buy it, right? That's the plan. It seems like the more it's available is directly proportional to the fewer that there are people that can purchase this technology, so that they can have an entire state or kingdom own it, and then you can live in the beehive. Is that too?
When you can't send
black bill?
No, because when you can't sell something in volume, then it has to be super expensive. When you're trying to sell something to the first customer and you haven't even sold one of them, the price is going to be exorbitant because you can't do volume. So the perfect time to sell experimental new wave technology like that is when there's gross wealth disparities, because you have to have the billionaires and trillionaires to be able to afford the first 5 units of the thing.
Right. What is the name of this new kind of crystal, by the way? It's the, Lunar Chang 2020, stocked up on roughly 4 pounds of rock, discovered a key ingredient for nuclear fusion, find unlimited energy.
I think it's that
helium-3, right? So helium-3, right? And if you guys ever watched
real moon.
Didn't you guys watch that movie Iron Sky? Right? Oh yeah. What's the one you're talking about? What is it?
With Sam Rockwell, Moon. He's mining helium-3 and sending it back to Earth.
Right.
Yeah. All this stuff is in fiction. It's amazing. I wish I knew what came first.
I'll have to watch. Sam Rockwell's done some crazy stuff. Like Confessions of a Dangerous Mind is so.
How long is it until we have unobtainium in real life?
Well, that's what we're talking about. We're about to get to that. But so I just want to go over this because I have ADD. But Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, super MK Ultra. It's another it's kind of like A Beautiful Mind, the two MK Ultra Mind movies, where not only did the government mess with this guy for years, have him kill people for him, and travel to East Berlin while bringing random passengers that were winning game shows that they'd put on TV, literally just so they could smokescreen his agency work. But then they went to the extreme of producing a movie that made him look crazy, which is hilarious, right? So he wrote a book that kind of said none of this really happened, and that's how he got away with publishing the book about it. Same thing with A Beautiful Mind. John Nash, who was like, he was in trouble because he was found to be anti-Semitic because he was talking about trade secrets to Israel being traded by the CIA. And so from that, they started giving him crazy drugs, making him into a schizophrenic, pulling things into the room, making them disappear until he was completely convinced, which is nuts. But on top of that, then made a movie convincing us all that none of that other stuff that he was working on in Endgame happened at all with Israel, but instead...
Right, and that was the only interesting part of the movie. Like, you wanted to find out if there really were the patterns in the newspapers and stuff like that.
You know, instead they just make it seem like he's crazy in the movie, which is just completely insane. But okay, so Helium-3, let me do this. Iron Sky. Have you ever seen Iron Sky? Who hasn't?
I haven't.
So this is the most important movie besides Wild in the Streets. So this movie, made on Kickstarter by Finnish people, is all about if the Nazis made it to the moon and have their base there, and they're mining helium-3. And so they're able to control everything just using the power of, you know, like the Nazi tech. But then they can't go up against our iPod. And so they have to go down and get an iPhone or something is brought up. So they have enough power to continue their civilization on the side. But all talking about helium-3. I mean, so, I mean, the free energy is coming. That's kind of what's the name of the thing that you know, Bob Lazar talks about? What's his chemical?
Element 115.
115. It feels like a helium-3 kind of a thing. He's always like, oh, you know, I don't know.
More implanting occulted future knowledge into fiction and stuff like that. All of this stuff is crazy, man, but I'm all about finding out, is this all happening in a cycle? Like, why do they tell us about the Superman crystals and then it comes or it's repressed or whatever? Like, is this a repeating cycle? If so, is there a way to escape it? You know what I mean? That's what I'm more interested in, like the overall, like, what is happening here? Like, why do they tell us in comics from 1945 technologies that are coming in 2025, you know? Like,
dude, what's the deal with unobtainium, right? Yeah.
I think Joseph Farrell writes about this. I haven't read this book. I'm sorry to admit that, but The Philosopher's Stone, Alchemy and the Secret Research for Exotic Matter. Joseph Farrell is Philosopher's Stone reveals the connections between the little-known ideas in physics and ancient alchemy, examining American, Soviet, and Nazi research. Farrell traces out alchemy's view of an information-creating physical medium and shows how this idea is related to the phenomena of high spin rotation and the unusual properties in matter that it induces. So it could even be a process, a secret process, and maybe a lesser, maybe not like a special exotic matter they're finding, but they're creating an exotic matter using some kind of unknown process. I think it's called Soviet mercury. Have you guys ever heard of that?
No.
Soviet mercury. It was like this sort of myth that the Soviets had, like Soviet mercury.
Right, red mercury. Right. Yes, but this was supposed to be nonsense. Is that not? Tell me more.
Well, I think that's part of. I mean, that wouldn't they tell you that all that Tesla we just looked at is nonsense too? So you know. So,
well, it's interesting because there's a lot of stuff about red mercury. The Soviets talk about it for decades. In the 70s, it was used for medical healing for Khrushchev. There's several elixirs that were created with it. It's, you know, interestingly connected to that idea. I was reading again, tar resin. Was it Sakjiit? Tell me again, Seth.
Shilajit.
Shilajit.
That's how Alex Jones pronounces that. I don't know if that's actually the right way or not. Shilajit. The monkeys up in the Himalayan mountains will actually scoop it out with their hands and eat it. The super monkeys.
Man, I mean, like,
we need that guy in the show, man.
I love Alex. Yeah, but like the guys working with this were also really interested in remote viewing and telepathy, and were involved with engineering. So
it would be more of a biotechnology than like a free energy technology. Is that what you're saying? Like, this wasn't.
Well, it's interesting because they said the Soviets have their own way of doing things, and that they're making nukes using this thing called mercury 2 sulfide, maybe involved in making red mercury, the Soviet mercury. And that it was supposedly, you know, this powerful thing, but they didn't tell you exactly how they made it. I don't think that's the point.
I guess Joseph Farrell's argument is that the Nazis, the Russians, and the United States were all working towards the same goal of finding exotic matter. I don't know if he's suggesting that they were all looking for the same type of exotic matter or if they're all just, exploring different ways of doing it. But I mean, I guarantee there's types of crystals on the moon that we've never heard of or interacted with. So if that's what they're getting, crystals or some kind of mineral on the moon, I don't know.
I mean, so we remember a while ago, let's see, Philosopher's Stone will be discovered in 2030. Do you remember this? There's a new translation, the Philosopher's Stone. I do this again. Same
Is this Nostradamus's prediction? Is that what
yeah.
You're gonna put stock into the Philosopher's Stone on the stock exchange? What was that?
Every freaking time. Well, there's actually a crypto coin called Philosopher's Stone, which is all the more ironic. But but I mean, so the idea that he said, that the Philosopher's Stone would be discovered sometime around 2030, and now we're hearing all these ideas about new materials, helium-3, hyper ionized material that we're already used to. I mean, it seems like we're getting to that point where we're about to hit a technological breakthrough, but of course, money will be so ridiculous because so few people will have it, and the people that have it will have so much of it that it won't make any sense.
Yeah,
the world of elitism.
I worry because Atlantis wasn't at war with anybody. Atlantis was a peaceful nation, a neutral, and yet they had the giant explosion. You know what I mean? That rocked the world. So I worry about all this stuff, but I think it's inevitable anyhow. Like, we can't shun technology, but we just have to be aware that I don't believe anything is free. I don't believe there's free energy. I think there's a cost to everything, especially technology. Like, no other animal will ever have an Atlantean moment. They'll just have everyday tragedies of your anthill gets stepped on or one monkey eats another or something, but they'll never have that Atlantean moment. As long as we're pursuing technology, I believe there's always a cost to that. And that's why I worry and I wonder about what kind of cycles do we inhabit. And I don't know how you investigate that, but I need to talk to people smarter than me. What do you think, Xirtus, about cycles of technology and resets and stuff like that? Do you think we're just repeating these technological cycles with similar outcomes? Do you think there's anything we can do to get ahead of this? I mean, Nostradamus predicts what's going to happen, but can we predict what could happen and choose different paths?
I feel like the fact that we have heard of something called the Philosopher's Stone, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it existed, but it kind of these myths always tell us about this world that we're headed towards, not the world we came from necessarily, but it is the world that they lived in. So I feel like that means it's a cycle. The other thing is crystal field theory, which is this idea of the breaking down of degeneracies of electron orbital states. And we know a lot about degeneracy, but with orbital states, it's different. They create crystal lattices based on this wave pattern. And so with wave patterns, the entropy can literally destroy something or it can force things together. This is how chemistry works, but it's also how radio can be used to tear things apart. And we usually think about it in such a, can this cause cancer or not way because of the pharmaceutical and the companies that want to protect themselves with like licenses and liabilities. But it could be a much broader question about how does crystal field affect us, especially when we talk about like 2.4 gigahertz was such a huge thing for wireless phones. And that's also the water frequency for microwaves. We got a super chat. CHW, Unveiling Genesis Mysteries of the Root Races and Cycles by Philip Lindsay. I haven't read that. Mark, do you know that one?
No, but I will be sure to take note of that somehow. I was just thinking about the crystal sort of nature of everything, right? I was just talking to Bob Frizzle, who wrote the book Everything, or his book's hard to remember. Everything in this book is something in this book is true, but I don't know. Bob Frizzle. Anyways, his book's underground classic, and the way he described it was that within a hologram, you can slice that into any amount of parts, and each part will contain the whole still, right? And then in a sort of way, we as human beings, our energy can respond to the crystalline pattern changes, just like a crystal has a sort of matrix pattern that can change over time. We human beings, through a certain process, maybe can crystallize whatever our electro signature is. And that's what, in my mind, the Philosopher's Stone is. I don't know if I'm doing a great job of
I
explaining.
like that because crystals are naturally occurring, and we're told that's the reason that humans naturally valued crystals is because the only naturally occurring solid translucents are insect wings and crystals, and insect wings are much more transitory. You can't really preserve them. Crystals are the only things in nature that people saw that were solid and you can see through them essentially.
Well,
So that's the initial attraction to them. But I like that they're naturally occurring and they have all this potential, but something in my instincts tells me the wrong way to interact with the crystal is to apply unnatural energy to it. Like maybe there's something about human intention or a more natural form of energy we can apply to these crystals and get some kind of better results, out of them.
People talk a lot about absorbing bad negative energy, and then you wash your crystals out with like salt water under moonlight and everything. And the moon does this thing, right? Like it's cold energy, cold heat.
Septic light.
Well, we have crystals inside of our body, and I believe the Egyptians, Bob Frizzle told me the Egyptians would pull the brain out of a person. It was either Bob Frizzle or David Elkington. I've spoken to like 6 really smart people in the past week, and actually 9. Sorry, I didn't mean to disclude you guys. So yeah, he said that they pull the brain out of the nose, and the reason wasn't just to like see what the brain was all about. It was because there's a crystal in between your eye sockets that helps us sort of navigate, gives us our sense of direction. And the Egyptians were looking to pull that out for whatever reason. But if you think about it, like you were saying, a natural crystal, I mean, in that same holographic way, what if there's a little human crystal that holds all of the forms that we could possibly take, whether that's an astral form, a physical form, a mental, emotional form? I mean, I don't want to reduce it down to that physical terms, but I think crystals sort of break the barrier between physical and energetic.
Mark,
Even on the level of your whole blood system is crystals, right? The hemoglobin crystals right here.
Do you think there's any correspondence between that, not correspondence, but correlation between that and like the bindi jewel or like the turban with the jewel on it? Do you think there's a reason people put the crystal there and like the world's oldest religions and stuff?
I would say that's exactly like why people also kind of maybe associate the feeling they get right there with the third eye. I think it could be a combination of both. I think this part of the face is just the most energetically sensitive.
Aside from the pineal gland.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's almost like they're working in conjunction with each other. Like the pineal gland is like pulling.
Like that's like an amplifier. If you put a certain kind of crystal right over your pineal gland, that's some sort of like an amplification or something.
Yeah, or even like it's sort of like when you have like a ball of liquid in a level, right? And you see the level kind of move around and sort of responding to whatever's going on to the level. It could be like that, where the pineal gland and this magnetic crystal are working in conjunction with each other, almost like a gyroscope.
Yeah, because you'd think if we had like super weak force powers, there would be something you could use to amplify it. So I intuit that we do all have super weak force powers.
If you put like a higher resonant crystal there, and it's sort of like the magnetite can sort of work with that crystal. Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I had an idea for like
CHW says time crystals of quantum mechanics are possibly equal to pulsar wave spells in the law of time cosmology. We are writing crystalline Zavuya time waves.
Whoa, that's above my pay grade. When I was a kid, I used to daydream about like my own cartoons and characters and stuff. And I had a character when I was a little kid called Unicorn. That was a guy that had like pretty strong telepathy but not that strong. And then they gave him a helmet that had a crystal right there and like an amplifier, like a speaker looking thing. And he could like blast out like telekinetic energy.
That's cool.
Well, so in terms of quantum time waves, though, the Stanford's physicists did help create time crystals with quantum computers. Let's get into why that's kind of interesting. Simply is that if you look at any computer, they have flickering crystals, uses clocks. This is a clock set for keeping how many millions of micro times a second it flickers, right? Inside of your microcontroller for an Arduino. The same thing can be said for these holographic quantum computer chips. The light is absorbed, it's imprinted. You have a flicker like a clock that runs forever without any batteries, as long as the energy is, like.
Can I ask a really stupid question before we do that? in like Star Wars or in Star Trek, they're using these Kypher crystals for the lightsaber, or they're using dilithium crystals for warp drive engines. What do they actually do to them to make them work, though? What do they do to it besides just having?
Because then that's always fun to try to do a canon thing. Because like, what is canon anymore? And I think it's like in the old days, they were so freaking heavy, and the energy that it was holding in the thing, it was like a 60, 80 pound resistance for a lightsaber. Now the little kids' lightsabers are ultra light. The crystals change the color; they're red because synthetic crystals, for whatever reason, have a higher power density when they're produced, according to the original like 80s books. The different colored crystals that weren't red are from, except for the first red crystal, which is from Korriban.
No,
Korriban.
I never read the books.
Korriban's right. Anyway, so but then they've got the green and blue and the other color. They all come from different places. In Knights of the Old Republic, the yellow ones are the chancellors. The Guardians use green. The blue are for the whatever, they fight more or something like that.
Like when you build your own lightsaber, what is in there besides an on-off button and the crystal? Like what attaches to the, what is it electricity going to?
Yeah,
like, what actually activates the crystal?
There's a fuel cell. The crystal is to focus the energy so that it comes out through the crystal.
So you're just applying it. And is it the same thing in Star Trek when they have their dilithium crystal? What do they do to stimulate?
Dilithium crystals do something. I don't know what, because I'm not as much of a Trekkie, but I know that there's some energy purpose. They use that for the fuel. I don't know.
Because I feel like if they're giving us all the spoilers, maybe we should investigate the canon more.
No, that's fair.
Right, we get the crystal part. Like, what do you do with it?
To your point about amplification, ancient societies would build these massive dolmens. They would go into underground caves. And granite's got a whole bunch of quartz in it. So possibly it might have been all those micro crystals interacting with our own setup that could amplify our latent abilities to a point where we could affect our surroundings, maybe even communicate with our higher selves. I don't know. You wouldn't want to do that? Higher self?
I do want to do that. That's all I want to do.
What's up, higher self?
I want to put a crystal right here and use my force powers. You can
right?
That's all I want to do.
I would suggest that you all could speak with your higher self right now just by intending to do so. At least that's what I believe. But I've been trying to rub these two crystals together because everybody keeps telling me that if you rub quartz crystals together, they generate static electricity and light. So as you asked that question, which I don't think was a dumb question, how do the lightsabers utilize the crystal energy? What do they do in watches? It's a similar thing, right? They're just kind of sitting there, and what is it? A hammer strike it and creates a little charge, and that gives it just enough energy.
I don't even know. I'm so technological. I'm like a Luddite or like a troglodyte.
Well,
I don't even know how watches work, to be totally honest. There is a quartz crystal in there. What's a quartz crystal in a watch do? I don't even know.
Look at the weirdest thing, if I can find a GIF of it, but when a crystal grows, it doesn't use any energy to do it, is the thing. It uses material. It does, if you put it in a solution, though, it will just continue to grow in the same shape, bringing out the crystal lattice further. So you can use this as a metric of time to watch how long something grows. You can use this actually to grow data. Like you can actually put data into a crystal lattice structure so that the data comes out in certain shapes, which is useful for quantum computing. There's a number.
What is the data, like vibrations or something, or what kind of data?
Yeah, because then you can actually look at the crystal and it's grown in a pattern. So you can store data directly in a crystal, but you can also use it to change the growth of the pattern. And you can use it for a flicker. So when you've got a certain amount of electricity running through it, that flicker is at a certain rate because of the growth of the crystal. So you can use it for perfect time, for perfect execution of processes for calculations if you have to time your calculations and things like that in order of operations. But you can also use it to reflect like what data is. So you can have 4 holographic points that you're looking at that will tell you, is it 1 or 0? Or is it 0, 1 or 1, 0, which are, hypothetical hex combinations. So you can use crystals for all of that. You can also use it for crystal radio, like the fact that if you have the copper wire to a crystal and a little bit of energy, it'll pick up on radio wave signals, which then you can broadcast out with some sort of a vibrating amplified speaker, right? That's what all it is really, is like a microphone that's vibrating because it's getting the signal on the other end and it's moving through. So from there, you can use that to transfer Morse code. It doesn't have to be voice, and then you can send data. So even the first TVs were wireless because it was easier. What kind of crystal is that, Mark?
Wow.
It's amethyst. Don't get me started. We could do this all night. This is apophyllite.
Awesome.
It's weird how many cables people use and how
Awesome.
copper drives electronics, because so much of your computer could be wireless and running through crystal radio at different frequencies.
Wow.
And they used to do that. Like the first Apple I computer used the antennas to send signal to the TV. That was its gimmick, was that you could connect it to the TV through the UHF signal. So, I mean, nerds.
Wow.
But-
No, I mean, I wish I
Awesome.
wasn't.
Awesome.
Maybe I'm jab juice injured, and I just can't understand that stuff. But like, I'm blown away that you actually understand how this stuff works. I feel like if I understood how this stuff works, I'd be king of the world right now. Like, what are you doing, wasting your life? Go
I
take
should
over
be
the
building
world.
more robots. It's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something, dude.
Or at least
Sending
more
out some
radio.
sort of amplified crystal wavelengths or something. I don't even, whatever you just said.
There's supposed to be, the other thing is weird is infrared. Like if you realize how many devices have infrared still, like all your TV remote controls, like it's weird how not every device like has infrared, because it's so much easier in direct sight than Bluetooth. And you could have, the game consoles and things like that. That's a total minor tangent, but
Wow.
I feel like we need to bring back a lot of the tech that we had just in the 80s, not even the 1880s. Just give me back like the old school, like Unix commands.
Laser tag. I can tell you that laser tag didn't work that well. The home edition of laser tag, that was infrared and it almost never worked.
That's true. Yeah. And if you had a remote, you could totally win at that game, by the way.
Yeah, that's true. I remember hearing about that, even though there was no internet. I knew someone that had all the Mortal Kombat fatalities written down in a notebook in pen. That's how old I am.
Cool.
Well, apparently Olivia's internet power at her house, she texted me, just went out. So she has no
Oh.
internet. So I hope there's no like crazy storm or something. But City and Mark?
I think if she's on the East Coast, that's what happened to my buddy Juan in Florida, who was
That's
here,
right.
been
That's
here.
right.
Did we
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
about Hurricane? Did we talk about Hurricane Ian at all? Should we bring that up?
We can talk about it. Yeah. I mean, it's
It's weather, I know, but it's like Ian. I love Ian, so
Well-
that's kind of funny. Dang it, Ian! Why did you
If
do
you
it?
want to stay on the crystal thing, I do have another thing to say.
Yeah,
more crystals.
crystallized.
More crystals.
Let's hear more
Yeah.
crystals.
So I was just speaking with a guy named David Elkington. I sent you a picture of his book, Xirtus. Is right here. Ancient Language of Sacred Sound. And what this guy has found out is when you take a cymatic device, like a plate with sand on
I
it,
love this.
and you bring it to certain sacred sites, the characters of the language spoken by the people who engraved and hieroglyphed this spot comes up on the cymatics pad. So let me give you some examples. They go to a Hindu temple, you get Sanskrit. You go to a Celtic sort of dolmen, they get Celtic characters. They're in Egypt, they get hieroglyphic characters.
Oh my God.
So what this is suggesting is that the voice, the sounds of the instrument that is our vocal cords, each individual note in our language, each letter is actually encoded in these sites somehow, and this tradition was carried into the cathedral building, and that's why they have such tremendous acoustics. I don't know if it carries through where if you take the cymatics plate into a cathedral and you get Latin, but that's what they found in some of these ancient megalithic sites.
Does anyone have one? Can we build one?
You just gotta put sand on a subwoofer, man. Put a glass plate on your subwoofer. Turn it upside down. Put some sugar.
I don't know how the device
I think it's the most amazing thing. Do you guys think that's what stars are? Is just space is water, and those are just vibrations in liquid lighting
I'm
up?
a big fan of space water
Somnolescence.
theory.
Yeah.
We should talk about space water.
Somnolescence.
What do you think of this? So this is a good point. Somnolescence, sonolumification, what is it?
Somnolescence.
So light through sound. So in the beginning, God said the word, and then light is a friction from the
in the Torah. It's in the beginning, God was swimming in the eternal waters alone.
And so the idea of material coming out, I mean, that makes enough sense. It's exactly the biblical scenario, and also the idea of energy, that the production of energy is through sound. But it's instead of being in a vacuum, I mean, all of the old mythological stories said it was in water, right? God swimming.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, we're in a soup. To us it doesn't seem soupy, but it's like the old joke: a school of fish swims by an old fish, and the old fish goes, "How's the water, boys?" And they're like, "Whatever." And they swim on. They're like, "What's water?" And that's kind of like us. We're in this soup, and that's what our vibrations are traveling through, and we're blind to it.
Does a fish get wet? Does a fish know he's swimming? You know what I mean?
That's Weird Al. That's like spitting on a fish. Dare to be stupid. It's like
Right.
spitting on a fish. Dare to
They
be
probably
stupid.
they probably see the way, like, because it's probably like being in water to be in air, and so to see it's probably confuses their perspective. All their perception is all off and augmented.
If in space no one could hear you scream, then I mean that's once again, I don't have the scientific mind, but that seems like a place it would be hard to travel around in if you can't produce any energy.
Wait, if you go back to that image with the Earth halfway in like a pool or something, or the ocean, yeah, there you go. So, like at night, you're on the underwater part, right? This is what the Earth. Let's just hypothesize. This is what the Earth looks like at night. You go under the water, and the reflection of the sun is what we're seeing on the surface of the water as the moon.
Oh, I love that.
Ooh.
Or the reflection of the Earth in the sunlight, because some people say that the moon is it is an accurate map of the Earth, like you're seeing the continents or the craters or something like that.
And that would explain why it doesn't miss on eclipses. I mean, it always lines up because it's a reflection.
I'm into it.
Here's this.
Let me ask you,
I like that. That's cool.
is there a medium that our voices would travel better in, like would be more powerful in? Because underwater, your voice doesn't travel as well, or
It depends. Whales are really good at it, right? Whale sound travel.
Star Trek 4,
Miles,
The Voyage Home. It's a space whale.
Great movie.
Space whale is sad, and it's gonna be the end of the world. It's singing sad songs in space.
That movie's great, dude. Was it? It's Star Trek 4.
Yeah, Voyage Home.
I love because Leonard Nimoy directed it. I love when they're on the bus in San Francisco and they see all the punks. It's like, this is so us right now. It's what's happening.
Love it,
man.
Cyberpunk.
Yeah, we talked about Cyberpunk. So I played the game a bit. I haven't gotten too deep. What is your thoughts on Cyberpunk?
Just overall, it seems like it's going to be it's like some kind of representation of where we might be leaning toward. Future casting just a little bit, even though it is. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I know that its base material comes from the 80s and 90s, even maybe some of the late 70s, but it is it feels shockingly close.
Dude, the corporations controlling hitmen working for them, espionage, it's all happening right now. People who can't afford to move on. You would also talk about The Office and talk about how you would redo it in today's world.
Well, yeah, you couldn't. It wouldn't be funny if I had to redo it.
Well, it wouldn't be funny, but you could redo it. It would be THX 1138.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It would literally just be this movie. And it's kind of funny, but the idea that, you're living in a conditioned cell, you interact with people at work that you have to interact with, you're drugged to make sure that you're happy or that you're not sad or causing a problem.
Donut, have some sugar. Yeah.
And if you can't deal with the obedience and eventually you do escape, well, you can escape so far as it costs more to retrieve you. Right? Like if it's too expensive to get you back. I mean, that's The Office. That's Office 2022, I think.
Wow, I totally don't get it. I don't get it. How is that The Office? I don't get it.
You watch THX 1138?
Yeah, and I've watched The Office, but I don't get it, man. Like I said, I'm medium smart, so I don't know.
Because it's like the Bo Burnham thing where you're trapped inside. Like, so for the last few years, people haven't been allowed to go to the office. To interact in the office, all the rules have been changed. Like there's a certain amount of distance, not just the physical distance now. There's a psychological and emotional distance at work. I mean, I feel like
they tried to make a telecommunication sitcom a while back, like 10 years ago. It was with Lisa Kudrow from Friends. There was a HBO or Showtime show where she was a telepsychologist. So the whole show was like a Zoom, and everyone hated it. It was the worst show ever. But I was like, no one is in the same room with each other. It was all like two screens and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. See, that's the thing. We're gonna get that distance is the thing they're trying to escape. Like even when they made Cobra Kai, they're like, we're living in a non-COVID world. Like the Cobra Kai world is not going to have COVID. They're not going to have the masks and everything like that. And they just produced it, like ignoring it the whole thing.
Thank God they didn't start using the masks in fiction. Oh my God.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think that's the way you have to deal with it. Otherwise, people need the fantasy. In 1929, all the crazy movies were all the most extravagant and elaborate, surreal fantasies because they needed an escapism. Americans got to the point where they're super soft and numb, and now they want to watch Jeffrey Dahmer. Like we need more reality, something like that.
Community-based culture. Where did our values go? They've been atomized to the point where now anything that is titillating is what we lean toward automatically because we're primed to do it because we've got nothing else to guide us.
Brutal. It is happening that way. I mean, so what are we going to be able to inject media with anything? I mean, I know that we have to do things on our own, but can media be, it used to be such a, these it started out as mythology. It was about heroes, and then it taught you how to be a better person. I felt like media could be good for that. It's completely hijacked. Can we get it back? Can we make
it depends what you define as media. I think like novels and stuff. Like I'm more of a novel reader. Like I learned so much about the human condition just through like reading like Hemingway and Steinbeck and just a bunch of the American classics and stuff like that. So I don't consider that to be like corruptive or like steering us into, it's just more reflective. So I mean, hopefully there is. I think culture jamming maybe is what you're talking about. Like just like if we create such a powerful cultural force that it's recognized, it'll permeate fiction, just as by its own gravity or whatever.
I think we've officially seen the end of what like the news cycle that started in 9/11, right? That whole 24-hour news cycle. And then it shifted to the internet, and now people don't trust internet journalism, but they do trust podcasters. They can tell the difference. I mean, you just mentioned that show that failed because it was a Zoom channel on television. It's a scripted version of essentially what we're doing now. The difference is all of this is off the top of our heads. We didn't sit around an hour before this and say, okay, then once I say this, Douglas is going to come in, like nobody's doing that. Nobody's interested in shows like that. So I think people are now given such a wide range of choices that eventually they're going to see so little response to what they're putting out that they're either going to try to co-opt what's going on in the free space of alternative media, or they're we're going to see a better society, because that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for more podcast listeners, more people who feel encouraged to get out and start their own shows and get there, because I mean, even if only a couple thousand people listen to my show, that's enough for me to keep on doing what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Right.
And everybody can have a community in that way.
As long as it's not as that's not to its own end, so it doesn't become like a Watigo type thing where just the success of your podcast becomes its own self-licking ice cream cone. The whole purpose of doing this is we're trying to find the undiscovered ground. We're trying to find the off-ramp from the cycle, at least for myself. So it's like these conversations aren't just to build a bigger audience, just to have and then get promo codes and sponsors and stuff like that, but actually trying to blaze some new territory or figure out something new or different or a new path we can take.
Right. Is there anything you guys wanted to cover before we start to tell where they can get more of your content?
Well, I'll just say, like NASCAR, I'm sponsored for this podcast. Speaking of sponsorships, nice. This guy, I just want to give him a shout out because he's a cool dude. He sent me this thing called the Hit Kit. So if you guys are stoners like me, go to www.hitkit. You put your lighter in there just like that. Boom. You got your smoke in there. And then you should just light it up.
How sick.
It's like the size of an iPhone. It's a giant iPhone size thing, but I think it'd be very useful. I like that.
Yeah. So I'm sponsored for this episode. My appearance is sponsored by the Hit Kit. Just this episode. I won't drag new sponsors in.
You gotta split that 4 ways with all of us in. No, just kidding.
All right. Well, I'll get in touch with them. I'll have them send you guys Hit Kits as well.
Everyone can
It's very cool. It's very
just want to say shout out to the chat. I keep another device here so I can read along in the chat. Every time I look at it, I see something so weird that I can't understand. I just wanted to give you a couple good ones I seen today. I seen one comment. I just glanced at it to see what people are saying. It said, "I like puppies, but I don't want to be licked." That was the one. That was the one I saw. I saw another one that said, "As long as your chicken parts are the legs." So I don't know what people are talking about in there, but every time I look at it, it's something amazing. It's like
the chat is wild. And also John Burt Mod says, "Smash that like." And thumbs up, share and subscribe. And I agree. I think that's the way to do it. We gotta get this information.
Share this stuff. Share it on Twitter when we go live and Instagram and other places. Yeah,
guys, that's awesome. Well, all right. I'm gonna show them where they can get Seth's music. VBDC link. Let me see, the linktree.vbdc. 1 sec.
VBDC, no CBDC.
No
VBDC.
Yeah, I got a new song coming out October 7th called Pushing Poison, featuring DVS and Cozy 19. It's going to be an anti-Jabby Juice song, so we'll see if I'm still on the internet after that.
Legit. That's good. All right. Well, also make sure you go to his YouTube and his Instagram. Subscribe to him on YouTube, and make sure you go to his Instagram, subscribe there, and also watch his show on is it Thursdays?
It's
Or
every day but Wednesday at 6:00 California time, talkie time. The #1 show on Instagram, according to Xirtus. That's my back jacket blurb.
#1 show. I think Doug, you're going to be doing something soon, and Mark, yeah, you guys are going to be all collabing. So I'll be watching these episodes.
Does Spotify put that like CDC COVID warning on songs yet?
We're gonna find out, man. I had a pretty big hit called Pure Bloods. It didn't get any warning on it or anything, but we're gonna have to see what happens.
You got to push that. That'll be a
Harry Potter. You're okay. That's all right.
Mr. Douglas, Mist 3R Douglas, Mr. Douglas.
MrDouglas.com. You can find me tomorrow and every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. I don't want to say Western Pacific. There it is. Better Call, Darth Calls YouTube page. But thank you. It's just a pleasure to be here with you guys. I love the education. It's a pleasure to have my mind cracked open every Wednesday, the Ultra way. Oh yeah,
dude. And yeah, make sure you guys are subscribed to Darth Call and watch that tomorrow. It is a epic show. I love Call, which definitely, we'll get him around sometimes. I know he works a lot too. So freaking awesome. And then my family thinks I'm crazy. There you go.
Yeah.
Loading.
I want to second.
Your site is down.
A lot of people are rushing his site. There's millions of people that are trying to connect right now. So
great to find that out live. But yeah, no, unfortunately it's not. I want to second what Douglas said. I love learning, especially at the beginning. I don't stay too tapped into what's going on in the mainstream media. So I appreciate learning what's going on and also hearing it from people that I trust, people who I know don't have biased takes. So yeah, it's always a pleasure being here on Wednesday Ultra. And yeah, yesterday I put out a new episode of Esoteric America. It's a two-parter. The second part is going to be out on next Tuesday. But yeah, it's all about Detroit. Next week we look at Esham and some of the dark hip hop that got all cooking in Detroit, that influenced Eminem and a lot of other big rappers that people know. And it's funny because they have this dark satanic energy in the rap community there, Insane Clown Posse. Not that I think it's like evil, but that's the personage they're taking on. And the city of Detroit has an actual pentagram in the city, like laid into the streets. So it's a really interesting episode. I recommend people check out the show Esoteric America, and you can listen to it on a podcast app if you prefer, or you could check it out here on YouTube.
Dang it, Detroit. Look what you did. That's crazy. That's brutal. Yeah, well, guys, I appreciate it. We'll do it next week, and thanks a lot for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Andreas.